Okay, we're there. Hope everyone's happy. Hope everyone can see everything and hear everything. So that's good. Tonight's talk is about 30 some slides, and they are photographs, for the most part, photographs of this interim period in New Bedford's history between the great whaling era of the mid-colonial, 18th century till the mid 19th century and the modern day today, is this this absolutely fascinating landscape of changing use in the city and in the harbor itself. And I just can't look at these photographs enough. They're absolutely astonishing. And what's really fascinating about them is there is almost nothing left of this landscape, which was built between about 1870 and disappeared, around 1970. And there's very, very little left. There's a few textile mills around, but there's no evidence of the coal. The coal pockets all up and down the waterfront. The railroad is really minimized, and a lot of the buildings and the architecture and the infrastructure along the waterfront is just completely gone. There are three of these photographs, these cyanotypes, that were taken about 1900 when a photographer named Joseph Tyrrell, get this, he climbed to the top of the smokestack of the Union Street Railway Company electric power station and took 3 photographs of this hazy waterfront. So here we are looking north from the bridge up toward Wamsutta Mills, and looking through, past, and over the Garfield and Proctor Coal Company wharf right there in the foreground. George Newton Proctor was a wool textile magnate of Fitchburg, Massachusetts, and he was the general manager of Garfield and Proctor. And John Garfield, John F.D. Garfield, also of Fitchburg, was the president. And this company supplied semi-bituminous coal from the Pocahontas Coal Company coal field on the border of West Virginia and Virginia. And the coal was shipped to New Bedford by schooner from bunkers located at Norfolk and Newport News, Virginia, and then distributed elsewhere throughout New England, including to Proctor's various factories in Fitchburg. And the schooners can be seen on the wharf adjacent to the piles of coal that were then distributed by rail. So these big, this is all coal, and it all came in by schooners, and then it was these derricks would offload the coal, which would travel down a conveyor belt and be dumped, and that coal would then be transported by rail out. And back here in the background is you can see the New Bedford rail yard, and this is Wamsutta Mills in the background. So let's see. I want to advance to the next slide.
Sorry, Mike, I have a question about this slide. Is that a spar pond in the foreground?
It appears to be, doesn't it? I don't really know what that is. I know that there was a lumber yard nearby. Traditionally, on I think it was Wilcox had a lumber yard there, and that could very well be what do you call it? A spar pond. Could very well be exactly what that is. Now I'm having trouble advancing my PowerPoint here. Okay, so this is the next in the series. So here we're looking north. Here we're looking east across the river, and then in this photo we're looking south down the river. So you can imagine this guy Tyrrell is up on the smokestack taking these photographs, and this particular photograph shows the new hydraulic swing bridge connecting Fish Island and Pope's Island. So this is Fish Island. And this is Pope's Island, and there's the New Bedford Yacht Club, the old New Bedford Yacht Club. Of this entire infrastructure, I believe that the only thing that survives today is this brick building right here. There is a very, very old brick building that you can see when you're going across. It's covered in siding now, but every now and then people run into the building and you know, they drive their cars or trucks into the building and tear off the siding, and you can see that there's brick underneath. And I think that that's what that is. But you can see that the bridge is not completed. The construction is not completed. The old bridge sort of comes around here from the north. And this whole project would be completely completed in 1902. And then the whole, the passage under the bridge had to be dredged for large schooners to have better access to the port and delivery to the David Duffin Sons coal pocket. So you can see David Duffin's son is down here on the south side, but they opened a big new facility on the north side. And then here's the same view, except it's looking south. And then we will see many, many images of this Philadelphia and Reading Coal and Iron Company pocket down here on Merrill's Wharf. This is the Bourne Counting House, which still stands today. So the hotel today is standing right here. So all of this stuff was destroyed during, removed, destroyed during urban renewal, including the Roach Counting House, which is this building right here. One of the center, the heartbeat of Yankee whaling was in the William Roach and William Roach Jr. Counting House. And right there it is, looking down over Roach Wharf and Roach's Wharf. This is a remarkable photograph, and we could just spend most of our time looking at it. There's only one whaler in the picture, and that's this vessel right here. The rest of these are packet ships like this schooner, steamers. This actually might be a whaler back here, but then here's the island steamer. And then the rest of these vessels are all coal schooners, three-masted schooners, which are offloading their cargo at the Philadelphia and Reading Coal and Iron Company. And then of course the rail runs down, and this is about where it terminated. So it didn't go any further down, which is one of the really interesting talking points about the industrial evolution of the city, is that the rail didn't actually connect to all of these factories going way down here to the south end.
And my quick question from the group, when was this photo taken?
That was taken, let's see, about 1900.
And then the comment on the bridge from the previous slide says it looks identical to the one in South Boston Seaport District. And one other thing, is a coal pocket a storage facility?
Yes. It's where it's offloaded and distributed. So for me, what my fundamental attraction to this subject was the vitality of seaports. And New Bedford is a really super example of the vitality of a seaport, how a seaport functions throughout history. And if we think about obviously we know the early whaling history. We know the place was built in the 1760s as a whaling port, and it flourished as a whaling port for the next 100 and some years. But as whaling declined, that same infrastructure was then adapted to industrial manufacturing. But the river, unlike most textile manufacturing cities in New England, did not provide any motive power. And so all the motive power for New Bedford's industry needed to come from coal. It had to come from burning coal. And that coal came by rail, some of it, and a lot of it came from big schooners. So these two vessel types, here's a square rig Yankee whaler, designed to sail the world and return with a cargo of oil in casks. This is a big 5-masted schooner. These things were built in Maine for the most part, specifically at this time, this late 19th century time, to convey bulk cargoes up and down the coast of the U.S. Lumber, stone, granite, and a lot of coal. And so these are the two very different vessel types. but these are the two vessel types that the city, that the harbor adapted to use, which I find absolutely fascinating. To get down to the really sort of earliest kind of a comparison, are these two beautiful paintings by William Allen Wall. And this is, William Allen Wall's painting of Wamsutta Mills shows, it's a real classic machine in the garden kind of a painting. In the back here, you see here's a locomotive and it's coming into town, but it hasn't invaded the bucolic verdure of the place. The factory itself looks like it kind of belongs there, and the smokestack is conveniently hidden behind the trees, and the people are just sort of hanging out with the cows, which are grazing in the grass. And there's a nice flourishing seaport in the background. Much the same can be said for the upper Acushnet River here. Very rich, very bucolic, and that all changed. And these are the guys who changed it. Way back in 1602, when Europeans first explored this area, one of them, Gabriel Archer, I love this quote. I use it all the time because it's absolutely spot on prophecy. He says in 1602 that this place may haply become good harbors and conduct us to the hopes men so greedily do thirst after. And that prophecy proved incredibly accurate with 400 years worth of evidence, speaking perhaps more to the consistency with which mariners viewed the world in the age of sail than any mere happenstance prediction of wishful thinking on his part. Not a great deal had fundamentally changed as far as the needs of maritime commerce are concerned between 1602 and the end of the Civil War. The winds still blew and ships still needed safe anchorage, and cargoes were still offloaded by hand at wharves and slips, and merchants in their counting houses still kept their books in neat manuscript hands. The merchants, however, had bigger, safer than whaling, greedily thirsty hopes in mind than the whale fishery, which was in itself a pretty greedily thirsty a hope. But all of these guys, this is, Joseph Grinnell, born in 1788, president of the First National Bank of New Bedford and the Taunton Railroad in Wamsutta Mills. Lemuel Colic, born in 1799, and the board of director of Gosnold Mills and First National Bank. He was a coal dealer and an agent for Garfield and Proctor. All these guys, I could go through all of their positions in society and the way they invested their money and structured this entire community to function as a manufacturing center and to push this place into the modern world. I mean, George, let's see, who was it? Which one of these guys? Now, okay, Gilbert Allen, right here. He was on the board of directors of the Morse Twist Drill and Machine Company, New Bedford Copper Works, and was later president of the New Bedford Copper Works. The Copper Works was New Bedford's answer to sheathing these ships that needed to be protected. And rather than buy copper, they just bought the ore and manufactured the copper into copper sheeting for the ships. Here, they did it here. This kind of material cash infrastructure, the cash structure of the banking system, the infrastructure of the waterfront, also brought the Morse Twist Drill and Machine Company here, which really had nothing to do with whaling at all, but it had everything to do with the fact that the city was set up in such a way that such a manufacturing enterprise could be successful. Very interesting stuff. Now, the irony, of course, was not lost on the humanities-based people in the community, like artist Clement Nye Swift, who turns William Allen Wall's landscape completely on its head. So, you know, here's William Allen Wall's, you know, landscapes from the 1840s, and here comes Clement Nye Swift, and this painting was made probably about 1890, and it shows, you know, that the grass is beaten flat, it's brown, there's no verdure, and there's nothing but smokestacks in the background. That's quite an artistic statement being made by, you know, by someone with those sorts of sensitivities. A little bit of a quote to go with that, by the way. Let me go back there. George Cowie was the keeper of the Palmer's Island Lighthouse, and he complained in his daily journal, "There are many manufacturing establishments within half a mile of the station on the west, and as the winds are mostly from the southwest to the north, much of the smoke from these establishments blows across the station, depositing more or less its poisonous ingredients on the roof of the dwelling, whence they are carried by the rain into the cistern." And so this foul water caused Cowie's family to get sick, and fresh water needed to be brought to the island from Fairhaven. You could see from the direction of the smoke that that's exactly what's going on. That's a southwest wind. That's the prevailing wind. We can point that out as we go along. So the railroad came to New Bedford in 1840. It was a branch of the 1836 Taunton Branch Railroad running between Taunton and Mansfield, which in turn fed Boston and Providence Railroad. This stock share certificate dates from 1874, when the New Bedford Railroad Company was operating the line, which in 1879 merged with Boston, Clinton, and Fitchburg line. And then later in 1893, it became the famous New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad, which operated until 1959, when it shut down. And it's all of our fervent hopes, I'm sure, that the railroad will come back to New Bedford soon, for a lot of reasons. But the railroad really did offer tremendous advantages to the seaport. So it can be seen in this New Bedford Cordage Company ledger, which is an invoice of 415 coils of sisal rope shipped via railroad to Messrs. Toole and Roper, Chicago, Illinois, for sale on account of New Bedford Cordage Company. So, you know, the New Bedford Cordage Company relied upon the rail, and it was located, the Cordage Company itself was located way up on the top of the hill, nowhere near a rail spur. And so what they had to do was put all their rope on these big carts and take it down to the railroad to be shipped. And that was an added cost. So drayage, the cost of drayage was, you see it built into all of the business records of the New Bedford Cordage Company. So the rail ran along the waterfront and ended at the Philadelphia and Reading Coal and Iron Company near today's Homer's Wharf. But on the way, it passed the steamship wharf, where passengers and freight came and went on a number of steamship lines, including New Bedford, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket Steamboat Company, the Old Colony Steamboat Company, and for a time, the New Bedford and New York Steamship Company. This is engine number 7, a 040 locomotive sitting in front of the Old Colony Steamboat Company terminal. Let's see, what's this? And then the New Bedford, and so this is a print of one of the steamers, one of the steamers that ran. This is the freighter, the city of Taunton, this is the freighter, the city of Taunton. This is the city of New Bedford and city of Fitchburg freighters, but this is the city of Taunton, built in 1892, and it's discharging. This is an odd photo. We haven't really gotten to the bottom of this photo, what it's actually showing. It's discharging U.S. soldiers and supplies at Central Wharf in an unidentified event. I'm not 100% sure exactly what's going on in that photo, but boy, we sure did put some effort into trying to figure it out. But it was one of the regular vessels of the Old Colony Steamboat Company. The steamboat company itself was pretty valuable because not just for shipping passengers, but for also shipping finished products to New York overnight. So it was an integral part of this hub of distribution, raw materials coming in, products going out, and people coming in too. We'll get to the people here in a little bit because the people are very, very important to this whole story. But again, like Clement Nye Swift, Clifford Ashley was acutely aware of America's changing cultures, both old and new. And here he captured derelict whalers on the waterfront in Fairhaven in 1916. He captured both the photograph and the painting, with a heavy industry flourishing in the background. So this structure that we will see, that you see very often in these waterfront views, is a 250,000 gallon coal gas holding tank for the New Bedford Gas and Edison Electric Light Company. And so that was the gas by which light was enabled through the city. It was produced from coal and stored in the tank and pumped throughout the city for lighting and other burning purposes as well. So this is a really wonderful kind of a representation of the way the artist Ashley took the photograph and made his painting out of it. I love this particular set of images because it really kind of tells a story. You know, you have Cape Verdean immigrants, you know, coming from the island of Cape Verde. They're coming to New Bedford to work in the factories, right? Here they are, and here's factory housing for Wamsutta Mills, and they come into this landscape. So they leave this sort of rural landscape on shipboard. They come into the harbor, and this is what they come in to see: a landscape in total flux. It's being torn down and built up, and it is an industrial landscape. In the factories, we see, you know, and I'm sure some of you folks have been following our Lighting the Way program, which tracks the history of women in New Bedford, tracks the history of women's suffrage and the labor movement. And these photographs, you know, show these are women working in the Morse Twist Drill Company, working right alongside men in these factories. These factories were all powered by coal powered steam engines, which ran all of the machinery. I threw this photo in because this is the really very interesting part. You remember all those white men we were looking at earlier? These were the guys, the movers and the shakers. Well, many of them lived out in the country, out in, you know, South Dartmouth, down in the Nonquit area. They may have had houses down there, but, you know, they're sort of living in the lap of luxury here, while the city grows just incredibly fast. I think it's an interesting juxtaposition of wealthy people taking advantage of the riches generated from their investments, and these are the people that actually did the work. It's an interesting time, I think, in American history. You know, this period around the turn of the 20th century. Very interesting time, and the work goes on. So this is in the early 1890s. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts allocated money to build a new swing bridge and replace the old one. And part of the construction involved dredging the channel to allow larger draft coal delivery vessels access to Garfield and Proctor, the Dennison brothers, and David and Duff and Son coal pockets. And the bridge was completed in 1902. But, you know, here you see, so this is, let's see, back probably right about here was that smokestack that Tyrrell climbed up to take the photograph, looking north, looking south, and looking across the bridge. And this building was obviously evident in that photograph, as well as were the rest of the David Duff and Son coal pocket there. So this is just a view looking west instead of looking east like the Tyrrell photograph did. Here's another one of these great cyanotype photographs. Excuse me, but this is about 1890. And I love this photo just because of everything that it shows. You know, the vessel types, barges, you know, in the harbor, schooners down here, the steamer. There's the steamer again, and you see these tank cars on the railroad. And this neighborhood, of course, is all just completely gone. I mean, this is Route 18 runs, you know, right through here. And it really does sort of capture this interim, this fulcrum period in the city's history. So with almost none of the factories located along the railroad, ubiquitous coal dray plied New Bedford streets for many decades, moving tens of thousands of tons annually for industry and home use. Keystone Wagon Works in Reading, Pennsylvania manufactured these heavy dumping wagons shown in this photograph. Such wagons were common use by New Bedford's coal dealers and distributors. And here you see one of these coal wagons coaling a tugboat, the SC Hart. This is about 1906. And here's the FT Aiken Co, who supplied coal. They joined with Hart and Aiken in about 1894, and this shows one of their offices at 84 Pleasant Street. But Aiken also handled Pocahontas steam coal, a bituminous coal billed as, quote, practically smokeless, unquote, but it wasn't practically smokeless, it was smoky. But it was also widely acknowledged as one of the finest power generating coals on the market. They also handled anthracite for home use, hard coal that burned hot for home use, and other bulk commodities like firewood and hay and other materials. So this is a pretty great photo, I think, of Pleasant Street and Francis T. Aiken and Co. coal wagon. Here's a ledger, one of the FT Aiken ledgers from 1910, showing that, you know, here's the name of the vessel. These are almost all schooners. And this is who shipped the coal: Lehigh Valley Coal Company, Susquehanna Coal Company. And then this is the size and the type of coal. So egg coal, stove coal, pea coal, chestnut coal. These are all different sizes of coal. And then these are the kinds where it comes from. So Lehigh, Hazleton, Pennsylvania. That's where my mother's people were coal miners in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. They're from Eastern Europe. Wyoming, Pocahontas mill or mine. So it's a pretty fascinating distribution network. And this is really sort of how it worked. So this is the end, you know, New Bedford with one of these steam-powered, sail-assisted barges. And this is Philadelphia. So this is the Port Richmond terminal in Philadelphia, and these are the mines up in the mountains, and this is the Pennsylvania Railroad, you know, running the coal, you know, 200, 300 coal cars coming out of the mountains, going down across Pennsylvania to Port Richmond to be loaded onto the vessels to be sent out to power Wamsutta mills so that we can all have nice cotton pillowcases and sheets. So this is a view. This is a view of construction for housing the coal for the New Bedford Gas and Edison Light Company plant, which this is about 1886. This plant would eventually create electrical energy from coal gas. And you know, a factory like famously the Nashawina mills way up in the north end was actually powered by electricity. So this is another of these views that show, you know, how the infrastructure is developed. This is actually, you know, filling in the land, building a wharf and filling in the land to facilitate the construction of the New Bedford Gas and Electric Light Company. This is these are all gondola cars from the Philadelphia and Reading Coal and Iron Company coal pocket being filled up to go to wherever it is they're going to go next. And here's another similar view, except it's looking toward Fairhaven. When here the gondola cars being filled up, here's a schooner alongside. Its coal's being emptied into the pocket for distribution. Another similar view. Of course, this is a little bit later. This is the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. So this could be 1910 or thereabouts. And you can see the masts of the schooners in the background. This, of course, this is all gone now. This is Homer's Wharf now. This is where the heartbeat of the New Bedford fishing fleet. But none of this remains. There's not even any evidence of it remaining. Fish Island, of course, underwent radical radical changes, many changes over the years. But whaling agent George Randall first began selling coal on Fish Island in the 1830s. So that's how early that goes. His concern changed hands several times before finally being purchased by David Duff and his son in 1891. So Duff was an immigrant from Ireland, and he started work as a teamer. So he was actually, he drove one of those coal wagons. But he built up his business doing that into an enormous concern. And so again, this might be the brick building that survived, that survives today. But here are the derricks, and you could see these derricks, with their big shovel claws that would empty the coal out of the schooners and run it down conveyors for distribution. There's no rail link to David Duff and Son, so all of their coal was distributed via dray. This is the trolley system, but there was no industrial railroad to Fish Island. Interesting enough, this is Nye Oil. So there it is, William F. Nye. This is the Nye Oil Company on Fish Island. Of course, this great big stone building is also destroyed, long gone. But Nye Oil survives. It's still in business in Fairhaven today. There's a beautiful view, nice and clean, of Fish Island and the David Duff and Son coal pocket. The bridge is completed. This is 1902 or after, and it looks very, very familiar in some ways to us today, being the straight line, nice and wide, and there's the swing bridge. Of course, all of this is gone, and all of this is gone, but this L still remains. So as you drive across the bridge, you can still see this. It's a very, very old part of the Fish Island infrastructure, and it remains today. Great photo. Some of these photos I included just because they're just great photographs. So this is, from the newly dredged channel. So the bridge is behind us, and this is one of the channels. And this great big coal barge, the Imperator of New York, and it's being emptied, and this is all the coal. And this, this is another of these barges that's being emptied for smokestack industries. And remember, as I said in an earlier slide, if the wind was southwest, here we see the wind is out of the north, which is one of the great advantages of New Bedford Harbor, especially from the whaling days, which is most days, 5 days out of the week, as everybody knows, the wind is southwest blowing up the harbor, and then a couple days out of the week shifts around to the north so ships can sail into the harbor safely and out of the harbor safely. It's one of the really fascinating features of the place that lends itself to such a successful maritime endeavor. This is a fabulous photo of the David Duffin and Son coal pocket. And here are the derricks, and this is Garfield and Proctor in the background. And you got all these coal barges are stacked up in the frozen Acushnet River. And here comes the tugboat, breaking the ice as she goes along. And there's the Unitarian Church in Fairhaven. Just really fabulous set of photographs there. Sort of moody, I think. Not as moody as this one. This is another of my favorite photographs of this whole thing. The Dennison Brothers Coal Company was located just north of the bridge. It burned down eventually, but it was one of the few few facilities that actually had its own rail spur. So all the coal that came into Garfield and Proctor and Dennison Brothers could be loaded right on the railroad and taken off to wherever it was going. Pretty great photograph. And there's another view before the place burned down. With all of these drayage carts, these are very important parts of the history of the city that, we don't really think too much about how goods got from all over the city, from the waterfront to all over the city. They weren't transported by rail until, sort of much later. The entire north end of New Bedford actually was the rail fed almost all of those storage facilities up there. So, that giant poured concrete structure, the Belleville warehouse on Nash Road, that enormous structure, it's still there. It's gigantic. That had its own rail spur. Wamsutta Mills had its own rail spur, as well as its own docks. So I think we'll probably be able to see that here's Wamsutta Mills, and it has its own spur and its own. And this is where a lot of the cotton for the mills was, that came via the rail, was stored before it was taken to the mills to be spun. So this is a pretty cool view of lumber being taken off the rail, off of boxcars, right at the Jonathan Bourne Counting House. So next time you're down there, across from the hotel, you can think about this photograph, because that building is still standing today. That's what it looked like, and you can see that there's a good reason that the New Bedford streets have that Belgian block, because that's the way they were traditionally paved. So although, by the middle part of the 20th century, the cotton mills were closing, beginning with the regional textile depression of circa 1923 through the Great Depression years and beyond, cotton continued to arrive in the port. In 1932, one single cargo load numbering over 10,000 bales was landed. And I believe that that's what this photo shows. This is that cargo of 10,000 bales of cotton. But this steamer demonstrates the resilience and value of the harbor very clearly as time goes on. And this last photo, shows the final shift. Here are these giant. So this is the smokestack that Tyrrell climbed up. So this building still stands today. This was the Union Railroad Company power station, and it's still there. It's a fabulous building. As you go by, you can admire it. This giant storage warehouse, of course, is gone, and all of these storage structures are gone as well. But the fishing fleet remains, and that's the next great step, and that's where this story ends as far as I'm concerned. That's our last slide of the evening. But I do think that it's really important to show the maritime evolution of the place and the adaptation of the waterfront to all of these many uses over time. So I'll thank you all for hanging out, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Well, thank you, Mike. I decided to stop interrupting your flow of talk, and then we do have a bunch of questions that piled up. The first one actually came in via email before your talk. A gentleman asking about whether or not the city of New Bedford is prepared for the new rail to Boston. I'm not sure if that's a question that you can necessarily answer, because that's sort of current events, but
I think the city is absolutely prepared. The bridge has been, look, let's go back some slides here. I'll show you. Look, see this bridge? It's being constructed. That bridge was non-existent in this postcard, and then it was built to facilitate better rail access. And that bridge was newly reconstructed, and the terminal in New Bedford is not built yet, but the parking area is all set and ready to go. And I think that philosophically, the city is absolutely ready. And physically, it's just about ready, in answer to the question.
Excellent. Okay, and another question is, on the slide you showed earlier looking south, Warren Pierce, asked if that was an oil tank in the right rear where the Edison plant is now.
So this.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know if that's oil. I think that's a gas tank. I think that's for coal. That's a coal gas storage tank. I'm pretty sure that's what that is.
And then another question from Blake Cole. The 5-masted design, speaking of your 2 types of ships you were showing earlier, seems quite unique. Was there anything about their particular use that benefited from more masts and sails?
Schooners were fantastic for sailing close to the wind along the coast. They saw overseas trade for sure, the big ones. The biggest one was the Thomas W. Lawson. It was 7 masts, and it was just enormous. And it ran aground on the Scilly Islands with a cargo of case oil. I think it was 1911. I think was made one voyage. She wrecked on her maiden voyage. But these schooners, these 3-masted, 4-masted, 5- and 6-masted schooners, were designed to get into various size ports and to carry bulk cargoes. And they were built in Maine. They were real anomalies because the rest of the world were building steel-hulled ships and installing steam engines in them. And Americans took full advantage of our timber resources. And as the great square riggers sort of went out of business, being put out of business by steamers, down east shipbuilders recognized a need, and that was the need to move bulk cargoes from the south to the north. So yellow pine, just enormous quantities of yellow pine, enormous quantities of coal, and an awful lot of granite as well to build these, and bricks to build these factories, and to build America's industrial infrastructure. Those schooners carried all that stuff. They carried those giant sticks of yellow pine and all that coal and all of those other bulk cargoes. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Another question from Nancy Gentile. Do we have a date for the photo of the soldiers?
I think it was 1892.
From David Longval, was it cost effective to rail product from Boston by rail to New Bedford to ship to New York City, since sailing around Cape Cod was considered so dangerous, especially during winter?
You know, the Boston to New Bedford run was not as important as the New Bedford to Boston run. So New Bedford saw a lot of raw materials coming in, and then products coming out. And so raw materials from Boston, you don't really see, you see a little bit of that in my research into, you know, my expertise is whaling history. And I do see that there are some goods coming from Boston into New Bedford via rail, but mostly it's New Bedford oil leaving via rail to go to Boston. And then as far as New York is concerned, a lot of cargo was shipped by sea to New York, but the rail system definitely served getting New Bedford products into the hinterland and actually getting raw materials into New Bedford as well. I don't know if that, I think that's kind of a redundant answer. I don't think I actually answered the question, but as far as cost effectiveness is concerned, I'm not 100% sure about the answer to that.
Okay, and from our own Bob Rocha, what are the dates of the mill photos? I believe that was during the slides of the interiors of the mills.
Mill photos.
Yeah, I believe it's the one you showed of with the multiple images and the women working in the factories.
Oh. Yeah. These? Let's see. What are the dates? Well, this Wamsutta Mills housing was built in the 1870s. These probably date from probably about the early 20th century. I'm going to say these Morse twist drill pictures, probably say 1910 to 1920. I'm going to think that's about right there. I'm going to have to look through my notes to get to the actual dates on that. Give me a minute. What's the next question?
Next question is from our own Akia DeBarros Gomes. Did different immigrant groups fill different labor niches, or were factories integrated workspaces like whale ships?
You know, you look at the photos, Akia, and the workspaces are not integrated. So, you know, French Canadians, Azorean people, you see working in the mills. You see Cape Verdeans working a lot in the New Bedford Cordage Company, and actually elsewhere in agriculture, the cranberry bogs, for instance. But you don't see a lot of Cape Verdean people working in the mills, at least not in the photos that I've seen. The bulk of the photos show a lot of women and a lot of men, but they're all white.
Okay. Just a comment from David Longwell, because I think it's funny. He said, "Fake news in its day, clean coal, ha ha ha."
Yeah, right.
From Bob, when were the coal distribution centers in New Bedford disassembled?
Well, that's a good question too. You know, I really don't know the answer to that. I'm going to say sometime between the about 1920 and 1960, they just disappeared. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I bet you that there's some old timers here in the city who would be able to answer that. But though, you know, that electricity sort of took over from coal, and they just sort of disappeared. Bob, I'm going to want to say probably around 1920 or so. That's
Okay.
probably my guess, but that's going to take a little bit of work to answer that definitively.
Okay, and from Ann Kirschman, what was the result of so many factories burning coal in terms of air or soot? Do you think there was a layer of soot on the streets, buildings, etc.? What must the air have smelled like?
Ridiculously bad pollution is the answer to that question. New Bedford, the New Bedford Yacht Club moved from their location on Pope's Island to Peyton Aram because their yachts were getting dirty, and that it was really horrible pollution. And it wasn't just the air pollution, the toxins from New Bedford copper and other discharges from, well, for one thing, the entire sewage system of the north end of the city drained directly into the river. So it was a really sort of a ghastly mix of nastiness that people had to live with. And today, New Bedford Harbor is a Superfund site, and you can see it now as you go across. You can see, they're dredging all that muck filled with chemicals out of the bottom of the river, and trying to stabilize the ecosystem somehow and clean it up. But it was a pretty ghastly situation.
And we just have a couple more questions, and just in the interest of time, Warren Purse says, it's easy to know where the harbor has been, but harder to know where it's going. Your thoughts? That's a big question.
It's a big question, but I think that with the South Terminal project and the potential for offshore wind and the continuous fishing industry, I don't really see the fishing industry going away entirely unless or until fish stocks collapse completely. I suspect that fishing in New Bedford is going to go on for a very long time. Whether it maintains its current levels of profitability, I can't say for sure. It's all in the hands of climate change. It's all in the hands of how well we manage fishery resources. These are gigantic questions, but I do sincerely hope that the offshore wind, what do you call it, initiative, can really take hold here, and that the harbor can serve as a facility that enables offshore wind. I think that could be a real important part of the city's business going forward. And I suspect that we will continue to see freighters coming in, and we'll see what happens with the railroad. I hate the idea of railroads going away. I'm a big fan of railroads, and perhaps we'll see a little less pollution with railroads going forward, and a lot more efficient movement of goods. Perhaps a lot less congestion on the highways. So that's sort of, I think that what I'm saying is not out of line at all with what you actually see going on in New Bedford today.
Okay, and Laura gave a comment more that the city just finished a waterfront urban renewal plan and adjusted zoning to accommodate the South Coast Rail. But she also has a question: are all of these photographs available in the museum's online collection?
Oh yes, they certainly are. These photographs are available in the museum's online collection, and if you get a copy, if you buy a copy of this for $20.
The link is just up on the website at the chat room again.
Yes. If you get a copy of this, all of the photos have their accession numbers with them. Between the librarian, Mark Prochnick, myself, the Curator of Maritime History, Michael Dyer, Akia, DeBarris Gomes, our Curator of Social History, we can get you, and Michael Lapides, the Curator of Digital Initiatives, we can pretty much get you any image that you want. We can get them in high res. We can get them to you. The key being the accession number. But that's what we're here for. So we're here to help you if you want to use these images for anything, and we're also here to help you to understand what you're looking at to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, the museum has an extraordinary collection of photography, so we really would love our members and visitors and supporters and researchers to use it and use us to help you discover it. So please get in touch with me or Mike if you ever have any needs in that regard, but it's really an extraordinary collection, and it's barely been utilized to anywhere near its full capacity. So another question on Jeff Pontiff. Mike, any comments on how New Bedford using coal competed with Fall River, Lowell, Lawrence, which I believe were still using water power?
Well, I mean, New Bedford was at the top of the industry. I think it was second behind Fall River in fine cotton textile production, but it was a world leader in textile production. There's no two ways about it. So it definitely could compete. Really.
Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt you, Mike?
Mm-mm.
And I just wanted to give a shout out to our dear friend and colleague, Pat Malone, is made a comment. Great talk, Mike. Nice to have a link to our IA theme issue. I don't know if you want to mention Pat's connection to that.
Pat Malone is in the audience. That's fantastic.
He is. Yay. Hi, Pat.
Pat Malone. Patrick M. Malone wrote Steam Mills in a Seaport, Power from the New Bedford Textile Industry. And it's one of these great works of scholarship. And what's cool about this publication, what's interesting about it, is that it fills a gap for us. It really does fill a gap that's a very challenging part of the city's history, where it just, as Kingston Heath says in his introduction, that this part of New Bedford's history has been kind of eclipsed by the more romantic whaling era, and that's all true. From my point of view as a maritime guy, I'm interested in the utilization of the harbor. I'm interested in how this seaport has managed to be vital for 400 years. Well, maybe not 400 years, but for since the 1760s, it was identified. It's been identified as a useful and valuable harbor for 400 years. So that's what's interesting to me. But this publication and this exhibition, Energy and Enterprise in the museum, addresses that chunk of history, the immigration chunk, which just completely transformed. Look at this, was a Quaker town, Quakers and Baptists, Protestants. They were separatists, came and settled in New England, and by 1920, this place is Catholic. It's a Catholic town. French Canadians, Portuguese, Cape Verdeans came and brought an entirely new and different culture to New Bedford, and this is the story of it. This is the story of how that happened. Whaling is part of that story, but the real power of it, the real muscle of that story comes in the second half of the 19th century, the latter half of the 19th century, and into the 20th century. So, I hope that you really do enjoy these photographs and come by the museum and spend some time looking at these things and thinking about them a little bit, because they fill a hole. They fill a hole in our story, an important hole.
And I do once again encourage you to get the publication. You will really learn a ton from experts in the field. It's beautifully written, it's very nicely produced, and you will see the city in a very different way after you read these excellent essays. There are at least 7 by different scholars, including Pat Malone, Kingston Heath, and Mike Dyer. So please click on that link. It'll be the best $20 you spent all day.
Arthur Mata, major local historian, covers the whole history of freshwater in New Bedford. Very important subject. So Arthur's also wrote it.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you so much, Mike, and everyone for joining us. And I know that Jocelyn has a closing slide she needs to share with everybody. So if you could please hold on and see that as well. But thank you so much, Mike, for a really wonderful talk, and for all of our wonderful visitors. There were quite a lot of you, so fantastic. We really appreciate your participation.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
All right, good night, everybody.